Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
A bill sitting on a desk that's been sitting there for 150 days called the HEROES Act that would bring relief to all of these people who are suffering right now, who are in food lines for hours. The 1 in 5 mothers in America who is describing her children under the age of 12 as being hungry, who need an expansion of what we're fighting for in that bill. SNAP benefits, you know what that is? We used to call it food stamps. It's what people need when they're hungry. But they're pushing through this nomination instead of the Senate Republicans saying vote on that bill, including one senator from this state. You know what I'm talking about.
I do. That's Kamala today. She's in Asheville, North Carolina. She was in Asheville, North Carolina, giving a stump speech about the Republicans' refusal to pass another stimulus package in an age of COVID. Now, you know, the House passed a stimulus package back in May, and it just sits and lingers. It lingers like Mitch McConnell's going to linger on way after he's expelled. Like so many things that are expelled that linger. That's Mitch McConnell. But here you have negotiations going on between Nancy Pelosi, who brought down the cost of hers, by $1 trillion she took off. And what did she do to get the $1 trillion taken off? She didn't defund any of the things that are priorities for us. She didn't defund rural hospitals. She didn't defund city and state. She didn't defund any of the things that are in our package that require relief. She just capped the amount of time that those dollars would go to cities and states, that those dollars would go to rural hospitals, that those dollars would go to $600 a week enhanced unemployment benefits. That's how she took the price down. They don't want any dollars. They want $0. And 2/3 of this country wants all the dollars. And they want them to go out the door right now because they are waiting in the longest food lines this country has seen probably since World War II. Now, Chuck Schumer was asked about, can't you just compromise? Can't you just, meet them halfway? Can't you just... And Mitch McConnell explained there really isn't anything to meet halfway on. It's not even real what they're doing.
Why should the American people believe that a deal is actually going to get done at the end of the week if one hasn't been done so far? Do you think it will happen?
Well, Speaker Pelosi is trying very, very hard. There are real needs that the American people have. The devastation out there is awful. Over 200,000 people have died. Millions getting sick. People losing their jobs. They can't feed their kids. They can't pay the rent. We don't have a testing and tracing regime, so when the second wave comes, we will not be prepared. So we feel an urgency, Speaker Pelosi, myself, our Democratic caucus, to get something done. The problem, as you pointed out at the beginning, has been Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is Dr. No. He doesn't want to get a deal done. His caucus is totally divided. If you can believe this, Anderson, there are 20 members, almost a majority of the Republican caucus, who don't want to spend any money. One of them said not one dime. We have the greatest economic crisis since the Depression. We have the greatest healthcare crisis since the Spanish flu pandemic. People are hurting everywhere, and they don't want to spend a dime because the people who control them, actually, the hard right, wealthy people who don't want to pay any money in taxes, who don't want to see any federal government involvement, seem to be running the show. Now, will McConnell relent? I hope that American people put pressure on him and all the Republican senators, because they're the ones standing in the way of getting anything done.
That's true. Now, Mitch McConnell has not even been in the negotiations that are happening between our Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, who sanctioned Rudy Giuliani's friend. Just don't miss a chance to say Andre Derkash, the feeder of false Hunter Biden information to crazy Rudy Giuliani, is a Russian intel agent. And Steve Mnuchin, our Treasury Secretary, said so and sanctioned him, just as an aside. But Mitch McConnell is not in these negotiations between Pelosi and Mnuchin, okay? And there are 20 Republicans that don't want one thin dime going out to the American people because the Republicans know that they're going to lose control of the Senate. And the Republicans, in the end, are afraid that their fiscally conservative base will abandon them as well as new voters and Democratic voters and moderate Republican voters who are sick of Mitch McConnell being the Grim Reaper, Dr. No, whatever you want to call him, Moscow Mitch. They're tired of him. They're tired of him being the impediment to anything and everything that the American people need, and instead concentrating on his court packing project. I mean, it's just so unbelievable. 34% of America want the court packed by Mitch McConnell. 34%. That means that the majority, 2/3 of the American people, do not want Mitch McConnell to plow through with this nomination. 2/3 of the American people want Mitch McConnell to pass another stimulus package. And Mitch McConnell is just doing a raw political calculation 2 weeks before an election. It has absolutely nothing to do with you. It has to do with him. If the Senate loses a majority of Republicans, if the Senate isn't majority Republican, he's not the majority leader anymore. Let alone he's on the ballot in Kentucky, and he could go bye-bye. So what would be the harm in meeting him halfway? Well, that's the whole ruse. Okay, this is the dirty truth. There is no bill. Mitch McConnell doesn't have a bill. Keep saying, well, maybe I'll do $500 billion. We're looking at the needs of the American people. We're looking at the needs of the cities and the states that had to absorb all of this hospitalization and all of this cost of testing and all of the costs associated with shutdowns and COVID and, taxes not being able to be collected because people aren't working, okay? All this stuff. And they want to fund their police. They want to fund their schools. They want to fund school teachers. They want to fund sanitation workers. All this is going by the wayside. So, okay, what if we met them halfway? Here's Mitch, Chuck Schumer explaining that Mitch McConnell doesn't even have a bill. That $500 billion thing he's talking about is a resolution. There's no bill.
Is a compromise on a smaller deal better than no deal at all?
Well, there are so many needs to the American people, and we're not even at that stage yet. The only bills McConnell will put on the floor they're not small, they're not skinny, they're emaciated. They leave out testing and tracing. They leave out helping kids open up the schools. They leave out helping people with their rental. We can't have a deal that has virtually nothing. Even the one thing they say they might be for, which is some small business relief, they leave out relief to restaurants. They leave out relief to our independent venues, our stages. They leave out relief to nonprofits. They leave out relief to our rural hospitals, which definitely need help. So they can't bring themselves to do anything. So we're not even at the stage of talking compromise. Here's an example. Let me just give you this. I don't know if you'd heard this. So Mnuchin and the Appropriations Committee has a good chunk of this deal. Pelosi said we need $143 billion. Mnuchin said we'll live with $119 billion. They were getting close. So they said, let's give it to the Appropriations Committee, the Democratic and Republican leaders of the House and Senate Appropriations Committee. They got there. The Senate Republicans said, we're not for 119, we're for zero. That's where we're starting. We don't have any permission to negotiate.
It's all a lie. We have no permission to negotiate with the Appropriations Committee chairs. I mean, they were getting there, right? They were getting really close. Everybody was, okay, what we'll do is we'll take down the amount of time that we pay out unemployment, or we'll take down the amount of time that we provide city and state relief or whatever. Okay, let's talk. Let's give it to the appropriations share. Oh, we're not allowed to negotiate. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.